Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Pete and this is a 5-minute Bags of Action review of Mission Impossible 2 from 2000. So it's 4 years on from the first movie being made and it's the first time I've seen this one. So what's the premise? I.M.F agent Ethan Hunt is sent to Sydney, Australia to find and destroy a genetically modified disease called Chimera. So this one was directed by John Woo, who's known for A Better Tomorrow, Face Off and Hard Target, a director I'm a big fan of. The story was written by Ronald D. Moore, of course known for Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek and Outlander, and Brannon Braga, who's also known for Star Trek Generations. The actual screenplay was written by Robert Towne, who of course wrote Chinatown, and he also scripted the first Mission Impossible movie. So cast-wise, Tom Cruise is back, of course, as Ethan Hunt. He's joined by Dougray Scott from Twin Town, Hitman, and recently the Batwoman's TV show. Thandie Newton from Young Americans and recently Westworld. Ving Rhames returns. Richard Roxburgh from Moulin Rouge and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is in there. John Paulson, who has been in very few films. He was in Sirens and he's since gone on to be a director and a TV producer. Brendan Gleeson, of course, from In Bruges and Paddington 2. Rode Serbedilizia from The Saint and Batman Begins. William Mapother, of course, who's Tom Cruise's cousin, who's been in Lost and lots of TV shows. And there's a very brief appearance by Dominic Purcell from Prison Break, Blade Trinity and the DC TV shows. You might not recognise him though because he has hair. And Anthony Hopkins is in this one too, but he is uncredited. So I was a big fan of John Woo back in the day, and I had a sizable crush on Thandie Newton. I also owned the soundtrack to this movie, and I love the Metallica song that plays at the end of the film. So it's a little bit bizarre that I didn't actually watch this at the time, so I'm making up for that now as I do a watch of all the Mission Impossible movies. So I went into this with a quite odd viewpoint really, because so many people had warned me to avoid it. They'd said it was terrible, and that if I'm watching all the Mission Impossible films, this is the one to avoid. The most noticeable thing at the start, of course, is Tom Cruise's mullet, but once you get past that, it's kind of got a smarmy, kind of sexy start. The first 14-15 minutes with added John Woo slow-mo, it feels a little bit like a perfume commercial, but then the more it goes on, the more it feels a little bit like a parody. That carries on. In things like Hard Target or Hard Boiled, those kind of slow-mo motions work when you're shooting somebody or an explosion, but when it's basically a lady's scarf moving in the wind, it feels a little bit strange and a little bit contrived. The way that Thandie Newton is shown in this film is extremely sexist and old-fashioned, and how Hopkins talks about her. Go to bed with a man and lie to him. She's a woman. She has all the tools she needs. So it does feel very dated. Dougray Scott took his role as the villain in this film instead of being Wolverine in X-Men. He plays Sean Ambrose here. The love triangle angle between his character and Ethan Hunt and Thandie Newton's character makes it different from the first film, but it also kind of limits the scope of this movie by making it so personal that it doesn't really feel like it's about the mission at all. And it's not even a love triangle, really. It's more about the female lead being used as a sex object for a mission and sleeping with both the guys so they can get what they want. Lines about who's gagging for it, are you going to spank me, make this film seem like it's from the 80s or 70s, not from the year 2000. Technology seems odd now, looking back, with digital cameras and memory cards being exchanged, but I guess 20 years have passed. Now, this film opens with a couple of edge-of-your-seat action scenes. There's a scene in a plane, there's hanging off a rock, and there's a car chase. And you think this is going in the right direction. Then it becomes slow and talky, and there's about 40 minutes where not much really happens, and the plot doesn't really move on until they grab Gleeson's character and they kind of up the ante. Then it becomes really about how the woman is the most important thing, and that doesn't really ring true that Ambrose would feel that way over his plan and the way he wants to make money from this virus. So about 40 minutes in, you've got the scene of the atrium where Ambrose knows what they're going to do. They're going to go in from above. But again, it feels quite contrived. There's a shootout here, but the John Woo two-gun stuff is as cool as ever. But some of his other trademark things feel really weird. I mean, once Naya is used as bait or hostage, you think there'd be a massive emotional weight to the decision she makes, but it doesn't, because I don't know, like you're constantly watching pigeons in slow-mo, again, as if someone is parodying John Woo rather than John Woo making the movie. His stuff really should be all or nothing. You should be seeing all these Wooisms, the two guns, the slow-mo, the pigeons, or nothing. But here, it kind of, you'll have 20 minutes of very Woo-esque, and then it becomes more like a typical Mission Impossible movie. And that mismatch is really, really odd. Motorbikes feature heavily in the final act, which is another thing that John Woo does a lot. I mean, the plot here is convoluted and at times nonsensical, purely to give the story some interesting elements to it. Two men fighting over a virus and a woman at the same time, shtick is kind of poor, people's actions make very little sense, and the rising tension feels completely forced. The final motorbike chase is ridiculously long, and when they launch at each other, it's kind of laughable. I found myself cringing more than enjoying this movie. The start was really cool, I have to say. If they'd gone with that kind of confident, almost like a sunglasses commercial kind of vibe, I think they could have held that going. But this film went rapidly downhill very quickly, and I don't think it ever quite recovered. Considering the story is about a potential worldwide virus outbreak and also a love story, I didn't really care, and you'd think you would with those stakes. Dougray Scott really didn't feel like the right fit, in my opinion, and Ving Rhames is massively wasted just being a guy that essentially talks into a microphone or through a screen. And Tom Cruise, for some reason, seems to be turned into a poor man's Van Damme in a lot of these sequences. I didn't really buy Nia falling for Ethan so hard, only having met him once, but hey, he's Tom Cruise, I guess. Overall, this is an absolute mess of a movie, and everyone was right. I'm glad I watched it for some morbid fascination, but despite getting to see Thandie Newton for 2 hours, I still really would never particularly choose to watch this again. So with all that considered, I'm giving Mission Impossible 2, it's going to scrape 2 bags of action, just. So, have you seen Mission Impossible 2? You probably have, it's been out for a long time. Do you agree with my assessment of it? Feel free to comment below or get in touch with us via email, Facebook or on Twitter. We have new episodes coming out weekly along with our full-length podcast with my co-host. And don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel.